Let's talk about buyer remedies first. The UCC provides remedies when the seller breaches. If the seller refuses to deliver the goods, the buyer has remedies. A seller's primary duty, of course, is to deliver conforming goods to the buyer. Conforming goods are those goods that match what was bargained for in the agreement. A seller can breach the contract by delivering nonconforming goods, incorrect quantity, incorrect specification. The seller may also breach the contract if it repudiates its performance. Repudiation means the seller acts or communicates in a way that is inconsistent with performance under the contract. For instance, the seller notifies the buyer that it will be unable to deliver the goods by the date called for in the contract. Now, the UCC treats a repudiation as a present breach of the contract, even if performance is not yet due. Meaning, if I am going to deliver goods to you, if I'm going to deliver footballs to you by October 31st, and I notify you on October 15 that I'm not going to be able to meet that deadline, you, as a buyer, may immediately sue for breach of contract, even though technically I have until the end of the month in which to perform. So repudiation is a present breach of the contract, even if performance is not yet due under that contract. If the seller breaches a contract by failing to deliver the goods, the UCC gives the non-breaching party these remedies. First of all, the non-breaching buyer may simply cancel the contract. We call this rescission, meaning the contract never existed. The buyer can go somewhere else. The buyer owes no more duties to the seller. The seller owes no duties to the buyer. They can simply cancel the contract. The buyer can obtain cover. They can purchase substitute goods. If it cost more to purchase substitute goods, then later they can sue for monetary damages, the difference between the contract price and the market price. The non-breaching buyer may seek specific performance. Now, this is very rare, or relatively rare. In our system, there is a great weight of preference for the payment of monetary damages. We don't like to order sellers to sell goods. We don't want to mandate the sale of certain goods. We would much rather pay for, or much rather allot monetary damages. However, in certain situations, there may be no adequate remedy other than specific performance. If you and I have agreed and I'm going to purchase your very rare 1953 Ferrari Daytona, and in fact there's very few of these vehicles available on the market and none for sale at any given time, and you breach that contract, then there are no substitute goods for me to buy. In that case, I can go to a court and ask them to order you to do specific performance, to do what it is you promised to do in the contract. The buyer also has a right to reject non-conforming goods, and in fact, if they accept goods and then later determine they are non-conforming, they can revoke their acceptance. The buyer has the right to accept non-conforming goods. If the buyer has reasons to retain the non-conforming goods, it has the right to do so. And finally, monetary damages. The buyer has the right to sue for monetary damages. These monetary damages are based generally on the difference between the contract price and the market price. So, when the seller delivers non-conforming goods, the buyer has these remedies. The buyer may reject the goods in whole or in part. If the buyer discovers that a nonconformity substantially impairs the value of the goods, their acceptance can be revoked. And in fact, a buyer may keep non-conforming goods and sue to recover damages, the damages that were caused by my failure to deliver conforming goods. The measure of damages for non-conforming goods is the difference between the value of the goods as accepted and their value if they had been delivered as promised. Meaning, if a buyer decides to retain the goods, to accept the non-conforming goods, they are entitled to the difference in value between what was promised and what was delivered. Going back to our hypothetical about the computer hard drives, if I shipped 128 gigabyte hard drives and not the 256 gigabytes called for in the contract, the manufacturer may decide to keep those non-conforming goods and instead will seek to recover the difference between what they were supposed to spend under the contract versus what they would have spent for these size contracts, these size of computer drives out on the open market. They're also entitled to recover incidental and consequential damages. We'll talk about those two types of damages later.